Well, hello, good morning and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Malaysia. If I just pan round here, you might actually recognize this. I'm actually in the city of Malacca, very, very important, chief of which because it used to be the most important part of Malaysia back in the 15th century when it became the Sultanate of Malacca. They say that the Malay peninsula really developed from Malacca, and then since then they went through 5 centuries of colonial rule. First it was the Portuguese, and then the Dutch, and then lastly the British. So there's a lot of colonial influence here, as you can see by the architecture, but there's also a lot of Chinese shop houses. There's also Chinese temples and mosques and museums, and in fact the whole of this area is a World Heritage Site, UNESCO World Heritage Site, along with Georgetown in Penang. You can watch a video all about Georgetown in the top right of your screen now. Before I start exploring and showing you what there is to see here, and there is a lot to see here, let's just dip into some of the history of Malacca, because there is quite a bit of history. The present-day city is said to have first been established by the Sumatran prince called Parameswara, who was the first king of Singapura, today's Singapore. He fled the island kingdom after a naval invasion, and according to legend, the site that is now Malacca's city was so named after he was resting under a tree known as a Malacca tree. This spot was at the mouth of today's Malacca River, where there was already a small Malay fishing village. While he was resting under a tree, he saw his followers' hunting dogs fighting with a small mouse deer before they were kicked into the river by the deer. Amused by this, he thought that the place he rested must be an unusual place, and so following this event in 1396, he announced that the place would be known as Malacca. Soon the location became the centre of the Malay world in the 15th and 16th centuries, and the most prosperous transshipment port in the Malay archipelago. In 1403, the first official Chinese trade envoy, led by Admiral Yin Qing, arrived, and later Parameswara was escorted by Zhang He, a Chinese admiral and explorer, as well as by other envoys. Malacca's relationships with the Chinese Ming government granted protection to Malacca against attacks from Siam and Java. This encouraged the development of Malacca into a major trade settlement and on the trade route between China and India, as well as the Middle East, Africa and Europe. Due to the large influence of Arab, Persian and Indian traders, Malacca soon turned into an Islamic sultanate, and Parameswara converted to Islam, where he married a princess from Pasai on the north coast of Sumatra, changing his name to Sultan Iskandar Shah. Due to its riches, the news of the success of Malacca reached the Portuguese, who had an established presence on Indian ports. King Manuel I sent a representative to establish contact with the Sultanate. At first they were well received, but the Tamil Muslim community convinced the Sultan to eliminate the Portuguese based on their treatment of Muslims in Goa. Reacting to the report, Sultan Mahmud then ordered several men from the Portuguese delegation to be captured and killed, but some of them managed to escape with their ships. Thus, in April 1511, Alfonso de Albuquerque, who was the Portuguese expedition leader, together with his armada, arrived in Malacca to sever its Islamic and Venetian trade. The Portuguese launched their first attack on the 25th of July 1511, but this was met with failure. Albuquerque then launched another attack on the 15th of August, which proved successful as Malacca was captured on that day. The Portuguese constructed a fortress using rocks and stones taken from Muslim graves, mosques and other buildings. Several churches and convents, a bishop's palace, and administrative buildings such as the governor's palace were built. The Dutch launched several attacks on the Portuguese colony during the first 4 decades of the 17th century. The first took place in 1606, where they laid siege to the town with the help of the Johor Sultanate. On the 14th of January 1641, the Dutch defeated the Portuguese and ruled Malacca until 1798. However, they were not interested in developing it as a trading centre, placing greater importance on Java as their administrative centre, but they still built an administrative building called the Stadthuys, which is now a tourist landmark. Malacca was then ceded to the British in exchange for Bencoolen on Sumatra. From 1824 until 1942, Malacca was under their rule, first by the East India Company and then as a crown colony where it formed part of the Straits Settlements, together with Singapore and Penang. During World War II, the Japanese occupied the city in January 1942, but officially surrendered to the Allies in August 1945, with the city left undamaged due to the lack of any heavy battles.
So this is the Dutch Square. It's also known as the Red Square for obvious reasons. And you can see all these buildings around here are painted this sort of deep maroon colour. But they weren't originally this colour. In fact, they weren't any colour at all. They were all faced with the original brickwork. And then I think the authorities stepped in and covered them up with plaster. And then they painted them white, and then when the British were here, I think they changed the colour to like a salmon pink in the 1920s. And then since then they've been painted again, this rather fetching deep maroon colour. And now this building here is the Stadthuys, which is Dutch for town hall. I'll put some information up of its history. It's a beautiful building. I'll just move out from behind this lamp post. And you can see it's got a balcony here. See an old fire engine, really lovely fire engine with nice lovely brass work at the back. So this is a lovely spot for a walk alongside the river, just down from the Red Square. You've got the all these bars and bistros and cafes. I guess in the evening this place really kicks off. So this is the Maritime Museum right on the river here, just south from the Dutch Square, and they've recreated a replica of Portuguese galleon. So this is where you can take river cruises up and down the river. Last night I saw several boats going past me as I was eating my meal. I'll show you some footage of that. Okay, so next stop is the Customs Museum, and this is free to go around. Well, that was very, very good. Lots of confiscated items on display that they've collected from people trying to smuggle them into Malaysia. So just about to go round this park. You can see the Malay name for it, but it was previously called Coronation Park, named after the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II back in 1953. And believe it or not, where I'm standing now used to actually be the sea. This used to be the seafront, and obviously since then they've reclaimed a lot of the sea back and did a lot of landfill. I'll show you on the map just how much landfill there's been over the decades. Well, there's meant to be a stone down there. It's just full of water. And then located at the far end of the park, we've got an airplane, a diesel loco and carriage. If I just pan round here, we've got a fire engine. So in this building with the gold domes, that's where the Proclamation of Independence was signed on the 31st of August 1957. And the building is actually the Malacca Club, but that's where it was signed. And they've got some exhibits on display marking the occasion. So this is a Chevrolet, but it's not just any old Chevrolet. This car was used by Malaysia's first president in 1957 after he signed the independence from Britain. And this is a Portuguese gateway. As you can see, it's got the crest and anno 1610, I think, written on it. I'll show you some information, some history about it. But this is, as well as the Dutch Square, Malacca's other famous landmark.
Meaning the famous, this Portuguese fort was built in 1512. It was originally called Fortaleza de Malacca, Fortress of Malacca, and was a solid construction with 8 defensive bulwarks and a perimeter of 1,100 yards. It took 76 years to build, between 1512 and 1588, and it enclosed a sizable area containing a governor's residence, administration buildings, a hospital, barracks, and churches. The oldest part was a 5-story keep, which eventually gave its name to the fortress as a whole. Sometime following the Battle of Malacca in 1641 and the occupation of the city by the Dutch, the keep was destroyed, but the outer walls of the fortress were expanded. However, in 1807, the British destroyed all of the original fortress and most of the outer walls. The Porta de Santiago gateway that you see today and the rebuilt Middelburg Bastion are the only parts of the fortress that remain today. Okay, sitting on top of a small hill from the Formosa Gate is the ruins of the Church of St. Paul, and this was built between 1566 and 1590, and it's said to be the oldest European building east of India. And then just below it we've got some really big graves here, some big tombs. See the names of these ones here, lots of Evans, so these are British tombs. And you can see here some beautiful gravestones. I think these are. I think these ones are Dutch. Could be Portuguese, I don't know. And that's where I'm going to leave off this video for now. If you like it, then give me a big thumbs up, and why not subscribe to my channel down below. Until the next video, see you later.